Good morning, everyone. Today is kind of a special day. It is my first review, and the one I've decided to do is the Silverplay RTA by Vapor DNA, believe it or not. They've actually done a few of these before, older versions rather, but this is kind of something new, and it actually doesn't have any of their sub-ohm branding or DNA branding. It does say made in California, so well done there, guys. But anywho, let's dive down really quick, and I want to show you some special features about this RTA. I've been using it for about a week, and I like it. But there's a whole lot more to that, so let's take the up-close look, and I'll kind of try and break it down for you, maybe slightly differently than everyone else is doing. So let's look up close, guys. Alrighty, as you know, box, tank, little tiny airflow choices there you can see. You've got a secondary drip tip here. Looks like Ultim, however, it is molded. Yeah, I'm not sure about that whole Ultim material. It's probably just a PC tip. Same with this one. You do get an extra glass tube. Now, I'm going to try and find another tube that fits on this, and if I find one, I'll put it in the end of the video. If not, sorry guys, but I really would love to see something that's slightly larger capacity, or even plastic, specifically plastic, so that when you drop it, you know, it doesn't break and can hold a little bit more juice, because this is a smaller tank. Granted, it is an MTL RTA, and you can tell by the nipply shape drip tip, as well as this kind of dual tier top cap. I don't know why this is now the standard of what an MTL rebuildable has to look like, but such as it is. 510 is removable easily enough. You can put a little shorty in there if you don't like this style like I do. This top cap does pull off with a little quarter turn. It's got two teeth and a little groove that it sits in. So even if you don't get it right the first time, a tiny little adjustment will let you pull that on and off really quickly. And this is quite a large O-ring as well, so that you have all the sealing points if you need to. This is removable and replaceable. They do include another one in the box, I believe. Don't quote me on that, actually, now that I've said that out loud. Only thing is, make sure that the O-ring is seated under the little lip. There is a little teensy lip right under here that holds it in place. So once you get it back to that, you shouldn't have any leaking problems. Now, the whole deck is exposed once you unscrew the tank section itself. Now, this has got a cool few tricks up its sleeve, namely that your cotton angle has the ability to be put pretty much anywhere inside the build deck itself. So even if you build your coil a little bit cockeyed, that's still fine. You have the ability to move the entire assembly. There we go, nice and tight. So this piece here is not threaded. This presses in via O-ring and is held in place. So anywhere you want this cotton hole, so to speak, you can actually move. Like so. You can move it any which way you like. Now, I do have a tiny little Clapton in here, the one I've been using, and we're going to go ahead and take that out. We're going to try and put a big boy Clapton in today. The one I've been using was a Wotofo pre-built N80 0.5 ohm resistance. Now, I did add a quarter turn to mine just to make the leads, you know, both on the bottom, and mine came out to be 0.4. So depends on how you do this. If you do it spaced, I'm sure it'd be 0.5, but mine was a little micro coil, I'm sure you can see. Now, a few little cons before I jump into these, because these are awesome. And by the way, these are on the Vapor DNA website as well. So if you go ahead and purchase this on Vapor DNA's website, which I recommend you do, these are also on the website, and they kind of work really nicely. Well, let me back that up. We'll try the big boy one and see how that goes with these tiny little screws. So some potential cons so far, right? Get it out of the way. These screw heads are rather small, and it's not that they're just small, it's that the underside of the screw has this kind of rounded edge, and so what that really wants what that really lets the coil do is sort of move around a tiny bit, and if it ever gets to that rounded edge, it'll pop out the side. So being careful when you're tightening down the screws, or if you have fingernails like I do, just sort of holding that wire in place while you convince this to stay put really makes a huge difference. Let's go ahead and take my coil out. Now, these are standard screws, so if you really hated them, which I don't mind them, but you know, these are two extra screws, larger diameter underneath, that will work for this, and I'm actually going to go ahead and install those for the large coil that we're going to try and put in here. You can put whatever size screw you want in, the head I mean. However, just be mindful that whatever you're putting in has to stay away from the edge of that sleeve. If it touches, you're in trouble. So just be careful, guys. These are our RTAs, they're rebuildables, so make sure you know kind of what you're going in for, what you're doing before you attempt anything crazy like I am by putting larger screws in. Now, this atomizer, this deck rather, has a party piece, and I am a huge, huge fan. So before I get all caught up on the size of the screws and building a Clapton in this deck, let me show you what makes this cool, in my opinion, right? This deck is removable, and all I'm doing is I'm just putting a little bit of pressure underneath. See? Getting ahead of myself. You have to remove the 510 pin. So let's do that, guys. Start yanking on the posts. Not smart. So by removing the 510 pin, ideally you would release the positive post in the atomizer, and that would allow you to, access and maintain, your positive post if you needed a new one, or service your insulator there. In this case, once you've removed the 510 pin, and there's a little O-ring there to keep it from leaking down your 510 and damaging your board, this is pretty much free to come out. Now this is what I was trying to do in the first place. Just a little bit of, there you go, a little bit of effort, and the entire build deck comes out. And this is amazing because then you can change your positive post, you can service your insulator, you can replace this if you had to, and more importantly, you can service and clean these O-rings. The bottom O-ring is what holds it in the deck, which is reasonable, right? The top O-ring here is the one that's important, and that is the one that captures this little cotton sleeve. So this is a very important O-ring for your, usability here. And the fact that it's serviceable, especially when it's assembled, it's kind of stuck up underneath and you can't get at it. So that makes it awesome in my opinion. Secondly, if you do happen to get juice, in and around your deck, yes, you can clean it, you can rinse it off, but there's always something that gets behind the air ring and all that here. So if you give it a little tiny push, boom. I love this atomizer for these reasons. It is completely disassemblable for deep cleaning and very much a longevity thing. It's a serviceable unit. So if anything goes wrong, you can replace it, you can fix it, you can fuss. I love that about this particular RTA, I think I've said RTA twice now. My bad. RTA, and again, I'm a man of simple pleasures here. I like something that is simple and clean, which the deck is. It's a little old school, but it's simple and clean, and especially if it's going to work for a really long time. Case in point, I can change the screws out. It comes with extra screws, but I can change them out to customize to whatever I want to do. Pluses. Atomizer deck is completely removable, replaceable, serviceable, etc., etc. Love it. This is awesome. So without further ado, let's go ahead and clean all this off, and we'll give the build a try, shall we? Alrighty, let's dive down into this little beast. Now, something I did in the beginning that I will mention as a con is I got really excited to build this original one. I did put my little baby Clapton coil that I wanted in here, and I got the whole thing assembled and everything was ready, and then I realized, oh, right, they included airflow. So they include these three little airflow pieces, and they're kind of fun. I mean, one of them is completely perforated with these tiny, tiny little holes for the full-blown MTL type RTA. And of course, there's a slightly larger one and then big old slots. Now, end of the day, right? This is meant for smaller coils. It's got options for larger airflow, though it's not necessarily meant for that. So it is sort of one of those things that the atomizer can take larger coil airflow, larger coil styles. However, the build deck is really only meant for smaller Claptons, kind of like what you saw me have in the first place, or a very cheeky build, which is what we're about to do here. We're going to try and put this coil now inside this deck under those tiny little screws. So let's give it a go. I'm sure everyone else has done, pretty tame builds. I figured I'd just push the limits because why not? I'm JayBo. I do that kind of crap. So let's get into this here. What is important is that your screws are not close to, or are hardly close to, the bottom pieces here. Now, what is, oh, come on, don't be fussy. It is actually really nice that this O-ring is so strong because there is going to be a tendency for it to spin in the deck, especially if this isn't tightened down all the way, like I just forgot to do. And the benefit here is that once the 510 pin, the contact pin that is threaded in properly, you shouldn't have any issues. So if you can see what I've done there, I've biased both leads to one side so that the coil could potentially sit flush underneath. Now, a potential con here, right? These threaded screws are only going to tighten themselves in one direction. It just so happens that the way this coil was pre-wrapped, it was wrapped the opposite direction, meaning as I tighten the screw, this little lead is going to want to pop out even more. So we're going to have to really give this an old college try here. Alright, let's go ahead and try a little snipperoo. Now again, we've increased the edge of the coil to the sleeve because just by nature of having these larger screw heads. So I've got to be really conscious of the fact that the positive lead doesn't get anywhere near this cotton sleeve. So safety first, guys, safety first. Alright, and we're just going to go ahead and do a little press check, and dude, look at that, we're golden. Alright, brilliant. So I'm going to throw this on a mod here. What have I got? The Luxottic MF. I'm running this in dual battery mode at the moment. This is going to have its own review here coming soon. Stay with. And our resistance reads at 0.23. Not bad, not bad. Give it a little pre-fire here. Cottoning a coil in this case should be pretty plain and simple, especially when you're dealing with just normal RTAs. However, in this particular case, because it's designed to, here we go, that'll fit nicely. Because it's designed to pinch the coil, the cotton, I apologize, here. So, you know, you stuff your cotton in the hole, and then you've got this little adjuster sleeve to dial in the tension. We're actually going to go ahead and do something a little bit different. Anytime you've got the cotton going through a hole or through a slot like this, and it's got pressure or being pinched on it, what you're doing is you're actually compressing the cotton right towards the edge, and you're creating a denser section of cotton in that point. And so what you're going to be doing is actually slowing down wicking here. So as the cotton becomes dry, this actually can't wick fast enough to catch up. And especially when you're using a bigger coil like I am, we are going to actually pat the cotton down on the inside of this and almost try and make ourselves like a vertical sub-ohm coil out of this as far as cotton styling goes. Now that I've got this all sorted, we're going to go ahead and lift these up just a touch. Set that down, and this is going to give us a pretty good idea of where to clip our leads, cotton leads that is. Alrighty, so now comes the fun part. I'm going to have to bend these downwards after being, you know, sort of fluffed and prepared. So let's go ahead and do that now. Just trying to kind of line everything up. Alrighty. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my little tool, I'm going to take it underneath, and I'm just going to roll the cotton with my thumb. And that isn't really going to do a whole lot, but it is going to kind of pre-bend the cotton in the direction I want to, and I'm able to bring that tool right up underneath the coil so that when we go ahead and install our sleeve, it's already going to be predisposed to that sort of cotton position that I was talking about. Just like that. So if I let go, it's going to run away, but that's alright. At this point, we are going to install the little cotton sleeve. Now, I'm going to double lock this device just in case I touch anything. Now, I don't know if you can actually see this. I'm going to try and lift it up towards the camera so you can sort of see where I'm going with this whole cotton method here. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and made the cotton, whoops. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and made the cotton into like a little poof. And the idea behind this here is that when I install the cap, and the little optional blade piece, we've got ourselves a cotton style built just like a sub-ohm coil. So I'm going to take my little tool here and I'm just going to push the cotton towards that hole just a tiny bit more. Now I'm sure this is sort of against what everyone else is doing, but like I said, because I'm using a slightly larger coil with a larger capacity for wicking, I'm going to go ahead and try and make something here that does actually work for... I should probably pre-wet my coil, shouldn't I? Rocking that white current from Superb. So freaking good. I've been on this flavor for at least a month straight now and I can't get enough of it. Granted, it's my own flavor in collaboration with them, but honesty never killed anybody, right? Alrighty, that's probably good. Now, let's do a little pre-fire. Yeah, that looks good. Alrighty. So I'm going to install this little top cap here, and I'm going to tighten that all the way down. Now, as you can see, I'll put this back up towards the camera again. As you can see, I've gone ahead and built the cotton so that it sticks right outside that edge. And effectively what this is going to allow me to do is treat this coil exactly like a sub-ohm tank. Let's give it a try. That should be plenty. So with such a small tank like this, I've actually got to be incredibly careful, or conscious rather, of the size air bubble that I'm leaving on the top, because that is absolutely going to affect my wicking abilities. And even though I'm not a huge fan, I'll use the tip exactly as it is. Okay. Definitely tastes like cotton bacon. Let's see if we can wear that off a bit. There we go. All right, so that's coming through really nicely. I've currently got this at 2.8 volts. That's pretty low. It ends up being about 35 watts. But even though this coil can take so much more abuse as far as wattage goes, and even the airflow, especially if I didn't even put one of these little airflow reducers here, if I didn't even include that, I still think this tank isn't really designed for full-blown clouds, bro, clouds kind of thing, to quote Grim Green, you know? It's just not, I don't know, it's not built for it. This is very much supposed to be a half-open, you know, little flavor sipper. Have a little sip. And honestly, for that, it's fantastic. The heat I'm getting off of this is really nice. There's a few little things that bother me, you know, aesthetically and all that, but I can change the drip tip. If I really wanted to, I can make my own top cap. Not that I really want to. Those huge screws that I put in there from the Bambino, actually, are a huge win, especially when it comes to using these Wotofo pre-made coils. I really do like these. I think that they're something everybody should really have. I mean, honestly, at this day and age, you know, if you have time to build your own Claptons, then well done on you, sir. I've built them myself. They're fun. It's a hobby, but I definitely don't always have the time for it. So in this particular case, I was totally happy to try and use some of those pre-mades on this build. It's very, very nice. So pros and cons, right? Pros, it is completely serviceable. From the inside to the outside, deep cleaning, changing the glass, all of that stuff. More so than we see on normal RTAs. So that is a huge, huge pro. Two, it is designed for an MTL style device. And yes, while we've seen other MTL devices, this one is actually pretty dang good. It does remind me so much of the Hurricane, but better in many, many ways. And I think that's actually what it was supposed to be, is sort of a reimagined, modernized version of the Hurricane. I absolutely love the fact that you have adjustability for the cotton, both in position of the cotton via the coil and also the size hole that you want it to. So for example, if I leave this overnight and I'm starting to get a little bit of flooding, I can actually just sort of mitigate by twisting that outer sleeve and reducing the amount of juice that can come in. Other pros, I don't know, I would say build quality is definitely one. Everything feels nice, the top cap is nice and it's a positive lock. It's not something that I don't think will wear down over time, much like, you know, for example, the smoke tank top caps or some of the other slidey top caps. They start to get a little bit of play and a little bit of wiggle over time. This is super solid because most of that play is being taken up by the springiness of the silicon top layer. So that's a really nice design. Very simple and very clean. Now, cons. First and foremost, I would say, you know, potentially having an O-ring as a capture point for a sleeve. Not even worried about wicking. I'm just saying over time it will sort of lose its rigidity, lose its durometer, so to speak. And so in that way, as you go to unscrew the top cap, you know, the actual deck sleeve may come with it, or the cap only might come with it, and then that way you're sort of fishing inside the top tank to grab it. And that happened to me once, but granted it was brand new. I imagine once it's got, you know, juice and everything on it, it'll behave. But I'm saying over time you may actually end up with, you know, the similar situation all the way at the end. One of the biggest cons for me was actually sort of absent-mindedness. I built my coil, I was all happy with it. You know, with a Clapton on this thing, it's not easy, but it's doable. It's very doable. I got everything perfect. The coil was glowing beautifully, and then I realized I had left my 3 airflow options on the table, and I was really bummed because I had to disassemble the whole thing and then try and install you know, my airflow. But the beautiful thing about this is that the airflow is being reduced to smaller diameters right before the coil. And that is the best way to do it. If you have a giant opening and a giant opening where the airflow ring is, and you reduce the airflow ring to a tiny little spot, trying to get that MTL, the airflow size right below the coil is going to be this huge hole, and so there's going to be no pressure, there's going to be no flavor doing it that way. Rather, in this case, you have the ability to throttle the size of the airflow opening just before the coil, and that is the best way to mitigate airflow, independent of an external sleeve, or rather in concert with an external sleeve. Let's see, what else? I just really don't like, for me, it's a con, but it's something I'm willing to deal with. I don't like the way that the build deck is stylized. And what I mean by that is that it's incredibly close to a Hurricane, which is also incredibly close to a K-Fun. This is a deck we've seen for 5 years or more. However, modern coils dictate slightly wider spacing. So had they included larger screws or screws that were offset one or the other, that would potentially make it so much easier to build with a normal size coil. And again, coils that are designed to compensate for, or coils that are designed for mass output, of which these airflow options are meant to compensate for. That's what I meant to say. So while you've got all these airflow choices, really, the tank is sort of good at either no airflow option at all, or stop down quite a bit, and especially when you're using a smaller Clapton, like I did the first time. So, you know, all in all, it's a good tank. I would recommend you buy it, specifically from Vapor DNA if you're going to, just because, you know, throw them a little bit of a bone in a sense that they designed it. I'm using the coils I got off their website, so everything is sort of like a little ecosystem for you there. And if you want, they have other 510 drip tips. I would recommend getting a different one. I don't mind it. It's just, I don't know. It's too old school for me. Maybe I'm fussy about that sort of thing. When it comes to getting one of these things, again, let's just go ahead and be honest. It's a Vapor DNA product. I got the coils off of Vapor DNA. Just send them some love. Go to Vapor DNA and check it out. See if it's something that you would really enjoy as far as your MTL setup. If you're going to go to that website, though, I would recommend using my code. I'll put the link below. Get a little discount. And for next time, guys, give me some feedback. This was my first little hardware review. So hop in the comments and tell me what you think. Please subscribe. Please like, comment, all that stuff. And for the other videos, give me a heads up of what you'd like to see. Maybe what I should do next. I think I'm going to do another review on the Luxottic MF box, plus a few other RTAs and things, maybe an RDA as well. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. I love you guys. Bye.